Under the glow of Walsall's streetlights, silence shattered in an instant. A young man ran for his life through the town centre, chased by masked figures wielding machetes. The attack was fast, brutal, with no warnings and no mercy, leaving the streets reeling, sparking a chain of revenge in motion. Was this a cycle born from loyalty and payback, or a feud that spiraled far beyond control? Today, we trace the events that turned local disputes into deadly retribution and left the town searching for peace. Welcome to Crime Pulse. We've just taken our investigations to TikTok, where every major case drops in episodes, short, sharp, and easier to follow, one clip at a time. Follow at CrimePulse_official on TikTok, the link's in the description, and start binging the stories behind Britain's hidden underworld. On a chilly January evening in 2023, Walsall town centre settled into a familiar quiet, its market stalls closed, the streets nearly empty. Bailey Atkinson, a 21-year-old who had moved from Coventry to Walsall 2 years earlier, walked with his girlfriend, their steps light after an evening at a local pub. 2 months prior, a confrontation between Bailey and the brother of a rival had left a lingering grudge, a spark of tension in Walsall's undercurrent of gang rivalries. That unresolved conflict, festering like an open wound, set in motion a chain of events that would shatter the night's calm and send ripples of violence through the community. As Bailey and his girlfriend crossed the market area, headlights pierced the dusk. A black Seat Leon and a silver Toyota Verso, both stolen days earlier and bearing false plates, swerved toward them with clear intent. The attack was no accident. It was revenge, rooted in that earlier assault, now erupting into a calculated strike. Bailey, sensing danger, urged his girlfriend to flee and took off down High Street, his breath sharp in the cold air. The cars gave chase, engines growling as they tried to run him down. Bailey darted between bins, bollards, and lampposts, each obstacle a momentary refuge, but the vehicles kept pace, their drivers fueled by a vendetta that demanded blood. At Lower Hall Lane, the pursuit ended. The cars cornered Bailey and 6 figures emerged. 19-year-olds Sonny Loveridge and Ronan McCulloch from Blockswich, 18-year-old Patrick Brookes of Walsall, 18-year-old Benjamin Wilkes, and 3 17-year-olds, their names shielded by law. They had met earlier in a supermarket car park, plotting their move, and now they struck, armed with machetes and Rambo-style knives, easily bought online. They shared 4 weapons in a chaotic assault, inflicting 32 wounds across Bailey's back, arms, and legs. As he fell, blood staining the pavement, one attacker raised a phone, attempting to photograph the scene, a grim act interrupted by approaching passers-by. The group scattered, their cars later found burned out in Slater Street, Wolverhampton, a futile attempt to erase their trail. Police arrived within minutes, their flashlights sweeping over Bailey's still form as they began CPR. Medics fought on the pavement, performing open-heart surgery under the streetlights, but the wounds were too severe. Bailey died in the hospital, his final words to an officer carrying a quiet weight, "I'm going to die. Tell my mum I love her." Detective Inspector Jim Marn, leading the investigation, later shared the toll of the case. Watching a young man's final moments, asking for a message to his mother, has stayed with my team. Bailey's death wasn't just a loss, it was a catalyst, its impact rippling outward, deepening the divide in Walsall streets and planting the seeds for further retribution. In the wake of Bailey Atkinson's murder on January 28, 2023, Walsall streets seemed to hold their breath, the air thick with unease. The brutal killing, believed to be born from a violent clash in late 2022, when Bailey was alleged to have stabbed one of the attacker's brothers, set this revenge chain in motion. That confrontation may have festered in the shadows of the town streets until it erupted into the brutal attack on High Street. This wasn't just a single act of violence, it was a spark that ignited a volatile cycle, its flames fanned by a history of tit-for-tat retribution in the town's fractured communities. In the weeks after the High Street attack, many residents admitted to being more cautious, doors bolted earlier, any slow car drawing uneasy glances. Rumors of retaliation spread through whispered conversations, fanned by fear and grief. The investigation into Bailey's death surged forward, driven by a relentless pursuit of justice. In a dimly lit control room, A CCTV operator watched the horror unfold live, their screen capturing the stolen Seat Leon and Toyota Verso, false plates glinting as they hunted Bailey down High Street. The footage, stark and unyielding, recorded the 6 attackers emerging from their vehicles like shadows spilling into the night, stabbing the unarmed 21-year-old as he fled, his 32 wounds a testament to their merciless intent. A witness, voice trembling, recounted the scene, medics kneeling on the bloodied pavement, performing open-heart surgery under flickering streetlights in a desperate bid to save him. Despite their efforts, Bailey's life slipped away in the hospital. His final plea, "I'm going to die. Tell my mum I love her," echoing in the hearts of those who heard it. This brutality, unprovoked and rooted in that earlier dispute, wasn't just a crime. It was a wound on Walsall's soul, deepening divisions and fueling the feud's next chapter. Over the next 10 weeks, West Midlands police pieced together a complex puzzle, each fragment tightening the net around the suspects. The CCTV footage, a silent witness, traced the vehicle's paths and false plates, while public tips through Crime Stoppers and social media whispers revealed the attackers' world, their haunts, their alliances, their movements. Phone data illuminated connections, mapping how the group operated and where they gathered. Each call and message a thread in the chain of retribution that began with that prior assault. Detective Inspector Jim Mahon, leading the effort, described the investigation's toll. "The images of Bailey's final moments have stayed with us, driving our resolve. Every piece of evidence, from grainy footage to fleeting witness accounts, was a step toward accountability, but also a grim reminder of the ripple effect, one act of violence birthing fear, distrust, and the promise of retaliation that loomed over Walsall like a gathering storm." After Bailey Atkinson's murder, on January 28, 2023, West Midlands police moved quickly, their investigation fueled by the community's shock and the clear evidence left behind. Within weeks, the CCTV footage, phone records, and public tips through Crime Stoppers led to targeted arrests. Officers raided homes and hangouts across Walsall, apprehending 7 suspects: Sonny Loveridge and Ronan McCulloch, both 19 from Bloxwich, Patrick Brookes and Benjamin Wilkes, both 18 from Walsall, and 3 17-year-olds, unnamed due to legal protections. These arrests, a direct result of the evidence trail, offered a glimmer of hope for justice, but also stirred unease, as the feud's roots, a prior clash involving Bailey and a rival's brother, hinted at more tension to come. The suspects' interrogations laid bare their ties to the gang conflict, each piece of evidence tightening the case and setting the stage for a courtroom showdown. In March 2024, Nottingham Crown Court became the focus of Walsall's search for answers. The trial carried a heavy air, with families and residents filling the gallery, their faces reflecting grief and expectation. Judge James Goss described the murder as unprovoked and brutal, noting Bailey had done nothing to incite the attack. The prosecution leaned on CCTV, witness statements, and forensic evidence to show the group's calculated intent rooted in the earlier dispute. Despite defense efforts to question the evidence, the jury found all 7 guilty of murder. The verdicts, delivered after weeks of testimony, landed with quiet force, a step toward accountability in a town scarred by violence. Sentencing followed, each term reflecting the crime's weight. Benjamin Wilkes, a minimum of 18 years. Sonny Loveridge, 23 years. Ronan McCulloch, 21 years. Patrick Brookes, 20 years. And the 3 17-year-olds, each 19 years, with the youngest only 15 at the time of the attack. Bailey's family, worn by loss, shared a statement calling the act violent and cowardly, its impact etched in their minds and those who saw the footage. They urged the public to stop and think before using knives, hoping to halt the cycle of blades that fueled the tragedy. The convictions, while a victory for justice, carried a warning. The feud's shadow lingered, each sentence a potential trigger for the next act in Walsall's ongoing conflict. As the gavel fell and sentences were handed down, Walsall exhaled, but not in relief. In the silence outside court, anger simmered. The verdict hadn't ended the feud. It had only shifted its target. Bailey's killing, rooted in a prior clash with a rival's brother, had deepened the divide between local gangs, each verdict fueling anger rather than peace. The sentences handed to Patrick Brookes and his co-defendants didn't quell the feud. Instead, they stirred a quiet resolve among Bailey's allies, setting off a chain reaction that would lead to another loss. Each side watching the other, waiting for the next move in a cycle of revenge that showed no sign of fading. In Blakenall Heath, a neighbourhood already marked by the earlier violence, July 8, 2024, began with an uneasy calm. Jake Sambrook, Byron Selleck, and Julian Falconer, all with criminal records and close ties to Bailey, carried his memory heavily. Recovered phone data later revealed their grief. Photos, memorial posts, and encrypted messages reflecting an anger that hadn't eased since his death. Their loyalty to Bailey, tied to the feud's ongoing wounds, drove their actions. Police, aware of rising tensions from prior incidents, noted a stolen black Ford Focus circulating in the area, reported missing days earlier. The vehicle, linked to one side of the conflict, and believed to carry a sawn-off shotgun, became a focal point of concern. Throughout the morning, residents in Blakenall Heath, including on Stevenson Avenue, saw the Focus moving slowly, pausing near homes tied to the Brookes family. Patrick Brookes' relatives, now central to the feud's narrative. The car's presence, out of place in the quiet streets, raised alarm, a sign of trouble brewing. As the day wore on, the tension snapped into violence. Around midday, witnesses saw a silver car trailing the Ford Focus along Stevenson Avenue, the pursuit quickly turning hostile. Shots rang out from the Focus, aimed at the silver vehicle, though no one inside was harmed. The gunfire, a direct escalation of the feud's simmering rage, marked the day's shift from threat to action. The Ford Focus sped off, weaving through side streets with sharp turns, as if shaking off both the silver car and any police attention. By 5:30 p.m., the Ford Focus reappeared near Stevenson Avenue before racing to Well Lane. There, Connor Brookes, 20, sat in a parked van with a friend, unaware of the danger closing in. The Ford Focus pulled up, and the shotgun blast erupted. Connor, struck in the head by a metal slug, died instantly, the wound passing through his brain. His friend, hit in the shoulder, survived. Connor, unarmed and uninvolved beyond his tie to his brother Patrick, sentenced for Bailey's murder, became a target in the feud's relentless cycle, his death a direct consequence of the earlier killing. Emergency services rushed to Well Lane, their efforts swift but futile, as Connor succumbed to his injuries. CCTV and forensic evidence later confirmed the Focus's role, capturing its stop beside the van and the shot that ended Connor's life. The police, already on high alert, saw the shooting as a grim outcome of the feud's escalation, each act of violence building on the last. Residents, shaken by the daylight attack, felt the weight of fear settle deeper, the feud's ripple effect touching every corner of Blakenall Heath, with Connor's death a stark reminder that revenge only bred more loss. The shotgun blast that killed Connor Brookes on July 8, 2024, cut through Blakenall Heath like a final punctuation in the feud's growing list of grievances. West Midlands police, already familiar with the area's tensions from Bailey Atkinson's murder, responded without delay, their arrival a direct pushback against the cycle of violence. Within minutes, officers cordoned off Well Lane, preserving the scene around the van where Connor had fallen. This quick action, driven by the need to stop any immediate retaliation, allowed forensic teams to begin their work under the late afternoon light. They searched the pavement, the van's interior, and nearby streets, collecting shotgun fragments, blood traces, and other materials that would tie the shooting back to its origins in the ongoing rivalry. Ballistic analysis soon linked the fragments to a firearm connected to Jake Sambrook, Byron Selleck, and Julian Falconer, men with prior records in local violence and known associates of Bailey Atkinson. The stolen black Ford Focus, key to the day's events, was found abandoned 4 days later, its interior holding gunshot residue, fingerprints, DNA from Sambrook, and traces from Samuel Danks Petty, a 20-year-old linked to the group. This evidence, building on the feud's pattern, showed the shooting as no isolated act, but a continuation of the revenge sparked by Bailey's death. Residential CCTV and public cameras filled in the gaps, capturing the Focus's path through Blakenall Heath, its slow cruises past Brookes-linked homes in the morning, the midday chase with the silver car, and the exchanged gunfire that echoed the escalating hostility. Each frame reinforced the timeline, a visual record of how one side's anger led to this fatal confrontation. Police put out calls for witnesses, stressing that even brief sightings could break the case open. But in Blakenall Heath, fear ran deep. Residents worried about reprisals from the rival groups, and some held back due to long-standing doubts about police protection. Still, a few came forward, their accounts painting the raw sequence. These statements, varying slightly on timings but consistent on the essentials, matched the forensics and footage, placing Sandbrook, Selleck, Falconer, and Danks Petty at the center. The combined evidence turned the investigation's pressure into momentum, each piece a step toward halting the feud's next turn. Within days, that momentum led to arrests. Mobile phone tracking confirmed the suspects' movements together in the focus before and after the shooting, their calls and locations overlapping with the day's violence. Coordinated operations brought in armed officers to handle the risks, given the men's records and the charge's severity. Sandbrook, Selleck, and Falconer were taken into custody, along with Danks Petty, each questioned under caution in plain interview rooms. The focus stayed on the basics: who handled the shotgun, what drove the pursuit, and any wider involvement, while teams kept digging into phone data and firearm traces. These interrogations, kept confidential, built on the evidence to map the shooting's lead-up, showing how grief over Bailey had twisted into this targeted act. The arrest offered a brief pause in Walsall's tensions, but they also underscored the ripple. One murder answering another, with justice now the only thread holding back more. The arrests of Jake Sandbrook, Byron Selleck, and Julian Falconer in July 2024 marked a turning point, each piece of evidence a reminder of the violence sparked by Bailey Atkinson's murder. Following the investigation's meticulous work, formal charges were filed: murder, possession of a firearm with intent to endanger life, and offences tied to the stolen black Ford Focus used in the July 8th shooting. These charges, rooted in the day's deadly events, reflected the ongoing cycle of retaliation tied to Patrick Brookes' conviction for Bailey's death. At their initial appearances in Magistrates' Court, bail was denied due to the case's severity and public safety concerns, sending the trio to await trial at Birmingham Crown Court later that year. The community felt a cautious relief, but the fear of further conflict hung heavy, each step toward justice a potential trigger for the feud's next chapter. Pre-trial hearings set a tense stage, with the case's high profile drawing scrutiny. The prosecution built their case on a foundation of forensic evidence, ballistic reports linking the shotgun to Sandbrook and Selleck, DNA and fingerprints in the focus, and CCTV tracking the vehicle's movements. Witness statements, though hard-won due to Blakenall Heath's climate of fear, placed the suspects at the scene, while phone data mapped their paths on July 8th. Defense teams pushed back, questioning the reliability of witnesses reluctant to speak earlier, and raising concerns about forensic handling and phone data interpretation. Security measures tightened around the court, protecting witnesses and jurors from the feud's undercurrent of intimidation, a direct result of the ongoing gang tensions. These proceedings, methodical yet charged, laid the groundwork for a trial that would test Walsall's fragile hope for resolution. When the trial opened at Birmingham Crown Court months later, the courtroom carried the weight of the community's grief and expectation. Residents and families packed the gallery, their presence a quiet demand for accountability. The prosecution's opening laid out a clear narrative. The shooting of Connor Brookes was a calculated act, driven by the defendant's loyalty to Bailey and anger over his murder, with forensic evidence tying them to the crime. Ballistic experts confirmed the shotgun's link to Sandbrook and Selleck, while the focus yielded DNA, fingerprints, and gun residue, placing all three at the scene. Phone records traced their movements, syncing with CCTV of the focus's erratic path and the gunfire exchange with a silver car earlier that day. Witnesses, some hesitant but resolute, recounted the chaos: the vehicle's speed through Blakenall Heath, the sharp sound of shots, and Connor's fall in the parked van. These accounts, though occasionally inconsistent on minor details due to fear, aligned with the physical evidence. The defense countered, arguing the evidence was circumstantial and witnesses unreliable, shaped by the community's dread of retaliation. They challenged the forensic chain and phone data, suggesting alternative explanations for the trio's presence, but the prosecution's case held firm. The trial, a direct consequence of the feud's escalation, exposed its toll. Connor's death a grim echo of Bailey's, each act feeding the cycle. After weeks of testimony, the jury's task loomed, to weigh the evidence and decide if justice could break the chain of violence that had gripped Walsall, or if the ripple of revenge would persist. The trial of Jake Sambrook, Byron Selleck, and Julian Falconer, rooted in the feud that claimed Connor Brookes' life on July 8, 2024, reached its final phase in Birmingham Crown Court. After weeks of testimony, the jury faced a heavy task, their deliberations a direct response to the evidence tying the defendants to the violence born from Bailey Atkinson's murder. The prosecution's closing argument leaned on the clear trail, ballistic matches, DNA in the stolen Ford Focus, and witness accounts of the shooting, urging a guilty verdict beyond reasonable doubt. The defense countered, stressing the need for certainty, warning against judgments based on fear or loose connections rather than solid proof. The judge's instructions were clear: focus on the evidence, stay impartial, and ensure guilt was proven beyond doubt. With that, the jury retired, carrying the weight of Walsall's hope for justice and fear of further unrest. For 2 days, the jury sifted through the case in a quiet room, revisiting the timeline of July 8th, the Focus's path, the gunfire with the silver car, and the fatal shot that killed Connor. On the third day, they returned, the courtroom still as their verdicts were read. Sambrook, Selleck, and Falconer were guilty of murder, possession of a firearm with intent to endanger life, use of a stolen vehicle, and attempted murder for the earlier shots fired. The defendants stood expressionless, while some relatives in the gallery wept quietly. Connor's family, seated together, held each other in silence, their relief tempered by loss. The convictions confirmed the prosecution's case. This was no random act, but a planned strike, driven by the feud's cycle of revenge. Each verdict a step toward breaking that chain, yet a reminder of its lingering grip on the community. Sentencing came later, after reports and family statements were prepared. The courtroom, packed with residents and families, carried a somber air as the judge spoke directly to the defendants. You carried out a calculated killing, showing no regard for life, devastating a family and community. Citing the stolen vehicle, the firearms use in public, and the premeditated act, he imposed life sentences on Sambrook, Selleck, and Falconer, each with a minimum of 30 years before parole. Samuel Danks Petty, 21, previously convicted of perverting the course of justice, received 3 years in a young offender institution for his role. Connor's mother, her voice steady but heavy, shared the family's pain. Our lives stopped that day. The pain never fades. Their statement thanked police, prosecutors, and supporters, but urged young people to reject gangs and violence, a plea to halt the feud's ripple. Police echoed this, calling the convictions a key step in curbing Walsall's gang activity, while stressing the ongoing work to prevent more loss. The sentences closed one chapter, but the feud's shadow remained, each outcome a fragile barrier against the cycle's next turn. Bailey Atkinson's murder in 2023 set off a chain reaction that reached its tragic peak with the killing of Connor Brookes a year later. 2 young men, 2 moments of violence, each feeding the other, in a cycle of retaliation that left Walsall streets tense and fractured. Each act echoed the last, anger answered with anger, silence met with fear. What began as a single feud spiraled into something larger, a pattern seen in towns across the country, where vengeance replaces reason, and the cost is measured in lost lives. The question now isn't just who's to blame, but how the cycle can be stopped before it repeats again. If this chilling case gripped you, dive deeper into the darkest corners of true crime with Crime Pulse. Subscribe now, hit the bell, and join our growing community to uncover more stories that shock and help us raise awareness to build safer communities.